Hey everybody, John aka The Escapement here, and today for my first mod video we're going to be looking at this SKX013. My customer actually just bought this watch brand new, and it's completely stock other than this nice quality Jubilee bracelet, solid link and everything. Not a strap code, actually. As you can see, it has push pins for sizing instead of screws, and it also has this stamped clasp instead of being milled, but still overall a very nice quality bracelet. I really like the parts that my customer chose for this one, so it should be pretty fun to see how it ends up turning out. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so because we're doing a bezel and crystal swap on this one, our first step is going to be to take our Seiko case back opener and just insert it in there and then just pop that bezel off. Notice how I have a plastic bag around my opener just to prevent any scratches on the case. And then we are going to take the bezel click spring off, and we're just going to put that aside with the bezel to put back on later when we're done. Now we're going to take our 3-point case back opener, and we're just going to adjust it to size to fit the case back. If you give that a little twist, should come off easily. Alright, so here's our 7S26 movement. Like I said before, this watch was just bought pretty much brand new, so the movement is going to be in good working order and very clean. And our next step is going to be to take our tweezers and pop that gasket right off. We're going to be reusing the gasket on this one because it is a new watch and the gasket is nice and pliable. Next, to remove the crown, I'm going to stick my tweezers into the little lever and just take that out, put it aside. Alright, so up next we're going to gently pry the movement out right above where the crown was with our tweezers. I'm going to make sure that's loose in the case. And then we're just going to take that movement right out onto our Bergion pad. At this point we still have to remove the crystal, so we're going to cover this and put it aside for later. And here we have our case. Alright, so to remove our crystal, here we are at the crystal press. And we're just going to put our case in there with the crystal. And then we're just going to bear down on that and screw it in, and the crystal should pop right off. And there we are. There goes our case. And as you can see, the crystal is left in the die. So we got to remove that. Alright guys, now that the crystal and the movement are removed and the case is bare, it's really going to be our best time to clean up near the mating surface where the gasket goes. This is a newer watch, but there still is a little bit of dirt and crud around there. We're also going to swab the mating surface for the gasket with our Rodico, just to clean it up a little bit, make sure there are no leaks later. And we're going to do the same thing on the crystal side. Just make sure there's no dust or dirt that's going to go in between the case and that crystal gasket. So it's now time to press the crystal on. I like to put the case back on, just so the watch is a bit centered in the die. And we're going to take our crystal gasket, now that we've cleaned the case, and just insert it in there, in the little groove. Make sure it's not protruding or sticking out in any way. And we're just going to clean that case back, or the crystal gasket, a little bit with the Rodico. Make sure everything's all nice and there aren't going to be any contaminants in there to cause leaks. Alright, now to the crystal press. We're going to install the crystal loosely onto the case, and then I'm going to bear down on it with the press. You can see the crystal being pressed into the case right now as I screw down on the press. And then I'm going to loosen and rotate just to make sure everything is even and seated properly. Alright, and now our crystal is installed. I'm going to take the case out and give it one little visual inspection just to make sure everything is even on all sides. And now that case will be pressure tested. So after the case has been pressure tested with no leaks, we're going to come back to our movement and dial. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove that chapter ring, which will be replaced, so we're going to pack it up for it to be sent back to the owner. And we're going to insert the crown just so we can have the hands lined up for removal. We're going to put the movement into a holder, and then install a little plastic bag on top of the dial just so I don't damage it with the hand removers. Then I'm going to take the hand removers. Sorry, my hand got a little bit in the way here. And we're going to pry those hands off. Those are going to be replaced, so I'm going to put them aside and pack them up. I'm now going to take my tweezers and insert them into the little gap between the movement ring and the dial and pry that dial off. Do the same thing on the other side. And there's our 013 dial. Here I'm just going to make sure the day and date functions correctly now that the dial's been removed. And after that, we're going to grab our new parts. Alright everybody, so here's our new dial. This one is from Lucius Atelier, and it is kind of reminiscent of the Tudor Black Bay with the rotor self-winding text on the bottom. And this dial is really cool. It has kind of a brushed scratch finish, and it's black on the outside and bronze gold in the center. This dial comes with 2 sets of feet for either crown at 3 or crown at 4. I've already removed the ones for the crown at 3. And we're just going to push that into the movement. And I just wanted to show this dial up close. Really cool and unique. Good job to the owner for picking this one out. Alright, so next up we're going to be finally installing our hands. And the first thing we're going to want to do here is pull the crown out all the way and then rotate it until the exact moment that the date changes. This is going to allow us to make sure that the date changes at right around 12 o'clock a.m. First hand is going to be our hour hand, and we're going to press that on. Sorry about my hand getting a little in the way here. It wasn't easy to press on these hands in front of the camera. And after that's aligned and pressed on, I'm going to give it a little visual inspection from the back and sides to make sure it's lined up and not crooked in any way. And next up is going to be our minute hand. We're going to do the same thing here. Just bring it over with a little piece of Rodico and then press it on. After that, we're just going to make sure that it's all lined up with the hour hand. Alright, so now that our minute and hours are installed, finally we're going to put on our second hand. This one was definitely by far the hardest one to do on the camera, just because the tripod was in the way and just that pin on the movement for the second hand is so small. After that's on, we're just going to give it a look from the side and back, and then we're going to move the hands a little bit to make sure everything is clearanced and nothing touches it all. And I'm also going to check the placement of the hour and minute hands at 3, 6, and 9, and also 12, just to make sure that there are no variations in the dial and the way the indices are placed. And now finally, I'm just going to take my Rodico and I'm going to clean up any dust that I find in the dial. This step is extremely important because if I do this and then close the watch up and then I see a speck of dust, then I'll have to start all over. Alright, so now we're going to get to my favorite and the most rewarding part of the build. Here is our chapter ring. This is a low profile stainless steel brush chapter ring from Lucius Atelier. Same place where the dial and hands are from. And then I'm going to place that on the dial. Then I'm going to take our case and I'm going to blow it out to make sure there's no dust under the crystal. And I'm just going to place it over the movement. Now is when you really start to get an idea of how the watch is going to look when it comes together. And I'm just going to give it a quick last look, make sure there's no dust or imperfections. Now that everything looks good, I'm going to grab our crown from the side, and I'm going to also grab some silicone gasket lube, and I'm going to just apply a little bit to the O-ring. Like I said in the beginning, this watch was brand new, so none of the gaskets had to be replaced for it to be water resistant. I'm just going to place that crown in so that the movement is in the right rotation. Make sure everything is smooth and feels good. And one last time, I'm going to take our Rodico and I'm just going to swab out the groove for the case back O-ring. Make sure there's no dust or dirt in here, because if there is, it'll compromise the watch's water resistance. Just going to run that through that groove a few times. Clean up any dust that's on the movement. Now I'm going to lubricate our case back O-ring with the same silicone that I used on the crown gasket, and I'm going to place the gasket in that groove. Now I'm going to do one last clean to the case back, make sure there's nothing in there. And then finally I'm going to put the case back on the watch, screw it down a little bit by hand. And then I'm going to take again my 3-point case back opener, and I'm going to give that a nice little rotation, make sure everything is tight. At this point the watch is sealed up and it's ready to get its final pressure test to make sure the water resistance is on check. Alright, here we are at the pressure tester. I'm not going to take a full recording of me pumping and then waiting. I'm just going to show me lowering the pressure in the tester and showing that no bubbles are coming out of the watch case, which means that it's fully water resistant. Alright, so at this point we're almost done, and this is going to be pretty much the easiest part of the build. I'm just going to remove the gasket from the bezel, put it aside, and then I'm going to take my Rodico, and I'm just going to swab out the inside of the bezel, get any dirt or grime out of there. Now that the bezel's all clean, I'm just going to do the same thing on the surface that the bezel will rub against on the case. I always like to do this just to make sure that the bezel action is 100% where it should be, and there's nothing that's preventing the gasket from mating against the case nicely. And now we're going to take our gasket, which I lubricated with silicone, and I'm going to just place it inside the groove in the bezel, making sure that none of it is poking out and all 100% of the gasket is in the groove, or else it'll prevent the bezel from turning. Then I'm just going to take that click spring, make sure the feet and the click spring fit into the holes in the case. And then after that, I'm going to take the bezel with the lubricated O-ring, I'm going to place that on there. Alright, so back to the case press. I'm just going to bear down on that bezel, and I'm going to press it into the case, and in a second you're going to see a pop, and that means the bezel is on 100%. Now I'm just going to take the case out of the press, and I'm going to turn the bezel a few times to make sure the action is where it should be, and it feels good. Alright, so our bezel insert on this one is going to be a flat ceramic bezel insert from Crystaltimes. And to install it, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 3M adhesive strip. I'm going to place it on the back of that insert on the outside, making sure that it's covered 100% on the insert. Then I'm just going to gently massage it onto the insert, making sure that there are no folds or anything. see that one last bump that I had smoothed down. I'm then going to turn the bezel on the watch and make sure that it's locked back so that the bezel's insert is aligned correctly. I'm going to remove the backing from the adhesive strip on the insert. And then I'm just going to place that on so everything is lined up properly. Alright, and with that, everything is lined up, and it's looking like we're all done. Check the bezel action one more time. And then I'm just going to put the bracelet on. Alright, so here we are with the finished product. I really love the way this one came out. Everything about it is cool and unique. That scratch style is quite a looker. And I love the matte ceramic bezel insert. Just really two things that you don't see in the modding community every day. Special thanks to George, my customer who sent in this watch. Thanks for the business and thanks for making this possible. If you'd like to inquire about mods or custom builds, please visit me at www.theescapement.com. You could also check out my Facebook and Instagram pages, which will be in the description. If you like the watch, please like, comment, and subscribe. And be on the lookout for more content coming in the future. Alright everybody, thanks a lot, and happy modding.